Welcome back. One final point before we go tonight. Happy International Women's Day. A day when feminists across our country remind us ladies that we are victims of the patriarchy and the only solution is to vote for Democrats. Funny how that works. So let's just stop right there. Last year, these feminist ladies on the left told us that the only way to prove our value in the workplace was to skip work. The day without a woman, they called it. Great message, ladies. Teaching young girls to ditch their responsibilities just to get a man to praise them in the workplace. If you remember, the wheels of industry did not stop turning when feminists played hooky. This year, instead of pretending we're victims of some vast patriarchal conspiracy, instead of whining about our salaries and pretending men don't pay us because they're sexist, all the while ignoring the fact that the career and life choices we women make factor into our salaries more than anything else, instead of turning the McDonald's double arches upside down and pretending that somehow celebrates women, let's talk about the women in Iran who are standing up to an oppressive and brutal regime. Let's talk about the woman who shed her hijab to reclaim her independence, and now she's facing 2 years in prison for doing so. Let's talk about the 30 million unborn women who have been aborted in our country since 1973. And let's stop pretending abortion empowers women, when the only thing abortion does is destroy and kill. Let's talk about the black women who are the fastest growing demographic of gun owners in our nation. Let's talk about the NAACP, who claims to stand for black Americans, but is advocating for the government to disarm these black women and deprive them of their means of self-defense. Let's talk about Condoleezza Rice, who said when she was growing up in the deep South during the 1950s, her family and other black families protected themselves against white supremacists with firearms. Let's talk about why these liberal feminists won't condemn Mayor Libby Schaaf, who warned criminal aliens in her city of Oakland about impending ICE raids, and as a result of her warning, convicted rapists were able to escape and are now roaming free in our streets. Let's talk about the women these rapists have victimized. Let's talk about how their victims must feel. Let's talk about the women who are now potential victims. Let's talk about the misogynistic attacks from the left levied against Republican women like Nikki Haley, Betsy DeVos, Kellyanne Conway, and Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Accusations that a minority woman like Nikki Haley slept her way to the top. Insults about Sarah Huckabee Sanders' weight and appearance, and attacks on her kids and her motherhood. Attacks hurled at these women because these strong and successful women refuse to toe the ideological line of the radical liberal feminists. Let's talk about the death threats against NRA spokeswoman Dana Loesch, the fake pornographic photographs circulated with her name on them that are definitely not her, all because she dares to support a woman's right to choose how to defend herself. Let's talk about the Jewish women verbally assaulted by radical hate preacher Louis Farrakhan. Let's talk about why the Women's March, who claims to champion all women, would sit in the audience of that speech and applaud as Farrakhan called all Jews, including Jewish women, evil. Let's talk about the co-founder of the Women's March, Linda Sarsour, and her attacks against outspoken Muslim critic Ayaan Hirsi Ali, threatening to cut off Ali's genitals because Ali is critical of Sharia law. Let's talk about how liberal feminists can possibly claim that they champion women when they reject and ignore and dismiss and demean any woman who is pro-life, any woman who is unborn, any woman who is pro-Second Amendment, any woman who is oppressed by Sharia law, any woman critical of Islam, any woman who is conservative, Christian, or dared to vote for Donald Trump. Liberal feminists claim to champion women, but they don't, unless they can exploit us ladies to further their radically progressive political agenda. And that is my final point. You can reach me on Twitter at Liz_Wheeler. If you liked the show, please send me an email at oann.com/contact. In the meantime, catch us here tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern. And until then, have a good night.